Facts about the rules for planetary pictures. A lecture by M.R.Feist, presented at the International Astrology Days in Bangkok, Thailand in March 2015. M.R.Feist managed Vitta's publishing company, which was established by Ludwig Rudolph in 1927. Introduction. In astrology, the term Hamburg School is first and foremost the German name for Alfred Vitta's astrological system. This system is well known as Uranian Astrology today. The book Rules for Planetary Pictures was from the very beginning until today the most important reference of the Uranian Astrology. The first collection of the rules were started in the Astrologers Association Hamburg School, which was established as a research project of Uranian astrology in 1925. The German editions of the book included not only the interpretation of the planetary rules, but also important introductions for Uranian astrology. In this way, the book Rules for Planetary Pictures became an indispensable friend for any interested student of Uranian astrology since 1928. Until today, we publish different editions of the rules book. Some editions differ a little, but others had fundamental changes. We can distinguish between two different periods of the rules book. During the first period, Ludwig Rudolph and Alfred Vitta were the main authors of the rules book. Neither the trans-Neptunians by Seegren nor Pluto were included in the book. This period ended with Alfred Vitta's death in August 1941. The second period began in 1946 and is ongoing. It represents the current standard of Uranian astrology today. Ludwig Rudolph included the four trans-Neptunians by Seegren and Pluto into the rules book. For this project of extension, he asked his former student Hermann Lefeld for support. Since that time, the interpretations became a mixture of both periods, so this second period is known as Vitta-Lefeld rules. However, please take into account, Vitta and Lefeld never worked on a common project together. To make it clear, authors of the first period were Rudolph and Vitta, but authors of the second period were Rudolph and Lefeld. In the following I will introduce you into the story how the rules were created. Additionally, I will give informations about the history of the several rules book editions. The original editions were published by the publishing house of my family and are the groundwork of all translations, without any exception. The first collection of the planetary rules was started in an astrological group in Hamburg, Germany in 1926. In October 1925 the Astrologer Association Hamburg School was founded by 21 astrologers. Friedrich Seegren, Alfred Vitta and Ludwig Rudolph were the main driving forces and they became members of the board. Seegren became the first chairman, Vitta became the second chairman and Rudolph became secretary of Hamburg School. In January 1926 Alfred Vitta talked about the collection of the planetary pictures for the first time. Every member should get notebooks for the collection of the rules. One additional notebook should be used for astrological laws and derivations. The other should be used for the rules in a special ordering given by Alfred Vitta. Alfred Vitta's special ordering was officially reported by Rudolph in January 1926. The ordering begins with the mundane factors. These are already accepted as being connected to life on Earth even without proof. Aries point, the sun and moon. These factors have to be understood as a unit with multiple interactions. The seasons, the tides and the weather in general. Furthermore, mundane life is determined by the annual, monthly and daily cycles. Even beyond astrology this is an unquestionable fact. The mundane factors were followed by the known planets in their natural order from Mercury to Neptune, and then the intersection points, moon's nodes, ascendant and meridian. Last but not least, and as a special part of Vitta's research program, the hypothetical planets Cupido, Hades, Zeus and Kronos were listed. The astrological calculated trans-Neptunians were not sorted beyond Neptune, because they were considered hypothetical until they could be verified by astronomical proof. In spring 1926 Vitta and Seegren gave mainly lectures about the technical basis. From fall 1926 the focus was set on the interpretation of the planetary pictures. Based on real horoscopes the interpretations were collected from the members and checked in the daily life. Alfred Vitta's sorting was used as standard sorting in the first period. Every second week, the members came together to hear lectures from Vitta or Seegren. Not every member had the possibility to attend all meetings. New members and visitors attended the meetings. it became difficult that all participants were at the same level of knowledge about planetary pictures. Ludwig Rudolph was the secretary of Hamburg School. His task was to collect and spread new informations for the members in his reports. This reports guaranteed a unified knowledge for the members, however only on a basic level. 1 year later, on the 5th of September 1927, the group came to a turning point. Friedrich Seegren presented his first 3 trans-Neptunians, Apollon, Admetus and Vulcanus, for the first time. In the following, Seegren started to speak periodically about his new calculations, but the group was not very interested in new trans-Neptunians and Seegren's new findings. On the 17th of October 1927, the members' meeting decided that in future the main part of the lectures should be focused on the reading of the horoscope. Additionally, it was decided that Witte should carry on with the interpretation of the planetary pictures. This was a hard setback for Friedrich Seegren. Some weeks later, Seegren rejected from his position of the first chairman. He withdraws from the association. Nevertheless, he remained connected with the principals of Hamburg School. From 1928, the meetings took place weekly, guided alternately by Alfred Witte and Ludwig Rudolph. The first period of the rules books started in 1928. The progress of the collection of the planetary pictures was slowly. Time was running and there was not enough time for other subjects. Ludwig Rudolph made Alfred Witte the suggestion to finish the rules outside of the meetings and to publish them as a closed collection. Alfred Witte agreed and gave Ludwig Rudolph the permission for this work. In his lectures, Witte preferred to keep the wording of the rules short and to the point, sometimes with wordplay, unconventional pictorial expressions, or in combination with Low German. Low German is a special language of northern Germany with similarities to the medieval Old English. Such expressions were changed by Ludwig Rudolph to standard language for the publishing of the rules book. Rudolph compiled the manuscript. He completed and edited the rules. He wrote the instruction part and added a 6-page original article by Alfred Witte. Ludwig Rudolph's work was finished in the late summer of 1928. The rules started in the first period with Sun plus Aries, and not with Meridian plus Meridian like today. For the first regular printing of the rules, Rudolph asked his father-in-law for financial support. With the support of his father-in-law, the first 1,000 copies of Rules for Planetary Pictures, The Astrology of Tomorrow, could be published by Rudolph's publishing company. Witte's interpretations originate from the analysis of known qualities of the astrological factors. His mathematical astrology combines 2, 3 or even more factors in a consequent manner. Instead of long-winded interpretations, Witte used short and concise meanings, a result of his mathematical scientific approach. Ludwig Rudolph said in the German instruction part,
Witte explicitly uses the simplest means of interpretation, that's the children's language of the planets, because the workings of nature are amazingly simple.
Following examples of interpretation can be found in all rules books since 1928. Example number 1. The first steps of interpretation are the basic meanings of the astrological factors. In the following examples we are using always the same basic meanings. Sun for a male person or the man. Moon for a female person, or in other words the woman. Mars symbolized activity or the act. Please note, the basic meaning depends on the investigated horoscope and the astrological question. In this examples we are primarily interested about the relationship between woman and man. In the second step we combine 2 factors. Sun plus moon can mean man and woman, or husband and wife. The combination husband and wife is in other words a marriage. In the third step we have a planetary picture. In this example, action, which is the expression of Mars, occurs in the axis of Sun and Moon. In the way of Witte, this planetary picture can express as action of man and woman, or the act of marriage. Example number 2. The basic meanings remains unchanged, but we take a look on different combination of the same elements. We combine the factor Sun plus Mars, what can be expressed as an active man, or the husband, when Moon, which is the expression for woman or wife, occurs in this axis. We will get the expression of the planetary picture the woman's husband. Example number 3. The basic meanings remains unchanged. We combine the factors Moon plus Mars, What can be expressed as an active woman or the wife, when sun, which is the expression for man, or husband, occurs in this axis, we will get the expression of the planetary picture the man's wife. This 3 examples showed us the usage of the planetary children's language. Every Uranian astrologer should train such planetary combinatorics. In the rules book, combinations of 3 factors are displayed as occupied sensitive points. For my examples, I changed the formulas to midpoints. For the most people, midpoints are much easier to understand, but it is important to know, occupied sensitive points can be expressed as mathematical equations of sums, half sums and differences. Formula equations are mathematical symmetries. This is one of the reasons why we are using mathematical expressions in Germany. For example, we are using the term half sums instead of the word midpoints. The first rules book was successful, but the design was a problem. On the cover page of the book was a 5-point falling star which stands like an arrowhead upside down. The idea behind the cover design was to symbolize that the cosmic forces are coming down to Earth. But the critics saw negative symbolism and didn't understand the intention of Rudolph's design. To prevent further criticism, the following advertisements of Witter's publishing house shows a down arrow instead of the falling star. You can see the modified design on the left. Rules Book, the 2nd edition 1932. The extended 2nd edition with 408 pages appeared already in 1932 with 2,000 copies. The cover design was changed to prevent new problems. For the first time the cover showed the so-called Witter star, which became the famous trademark of our publishing house. The Witter star was created by Alfred Witter personally on request of my grandfather Ludwig Rudolph. The 2nd edition of the rules book was a carefree package of informations. It includes many new features which are spread in different publications today. Besides extended introductions by Ludwig Rudolph, the rules book included following new features. An index with an alphabetical listing of the interpretations, which was later known as the lexicon or the key. Factors in the houses with Uranian rulership in the sense of Witter, which included interpretations and rulership for planetoids. Witter section, which included the perpetual trans-Neptunian ephemeras until 1942, instructions of TNP calculations, calculation tables and solar arc calculation tables. Ludwig Rudolph wrote that the rules book should not be seen as a textbook, but it should be understood more as a reference for Uranian astrology. At the same time, Rudolph was in preparation of the first textbook of Uranian astrology, with the support of Alfred Witter, but that's another story. Rules Book, the 3rd edition 1935. 1935. Just a few years later, the 3rd edition was published with again 2,000 copies. It was slightly expanded, 420 pages, and published in the same cover style. For the first time a photo of Alfred Witter was published. In the preface for the 3rd edition, Ludwig Rudolph wrote that Witter had previously refused obstinately to publish his photo. For the 3rd edition finally, Ludwig received Witter's consent. This photo of Witter is still today in the rules book and became famous worldwide. The 3rd edition was published in the terrible Nazi time. This edition has had a fateful history. It was banned in 1936. In the following years Ludwig Rudolph fought for the release of the rules book, but without success. Rudolph demanded compensation. The evidences for the ban were untraceable by the authorities. The authorities stated that the file about the ban was lost in Berlin, and the reason for the ban were not detectable. Nevertheless, Rudolph never received compensation for his loss, and the official ban of the book persisted. Please take into account, some astrologers worked as experts for the authorities. The opponent was not only the state, but also astrologers and astrological informers. This period was especially for Uranian astrology a bad time. In 1941 finally, astrology was forbidden in general in Germany, but until this time, Uranian astrology was particularly in distress for a period of 4 years. On the one side, critics of this new system were satisfied about the ban. On the other side, a distributor of the rules book was afraid in losing money, and so he published a similar book, but without trans-Neptunians. It was Rudolph's former business partner Reinhold Eberton who published a similar book as a result of the rules book ban. For the legal struggle of Witte and Rudolph against Ebertin, 50 astrologers gave an assessment that Ebertin's book was a plagiarism of the rules book. In fact, Ebertin's book was very similar and based on the same idea. The whole story would fill a known book and leave still many questions without a concrete answer. The rules book was in history and today always a guarantee for prosperous development of Uranian astrology. This development was hindered in this period in Germany, but not in the USA. Rules book. The first official translation 1939. Before the rules book was banned in 1936, Ludwig Rudolph announced to the authorities the preparation of the first official translation into the English language. The translator was Richard Sveller from Cleveland, Ohio, USA. Richard Sveller was an American book dealer, publisher, author, music teacher and astrologer. He was member of the Astrological Association of Ohio, where he was chairman of the research committee. In the 1930s, Sveller became official representative of Uranian astrology in North America. He was the only translator in America who was ever supported by Rudolph with the consent of Alfred Witte. Sveller introduced the methods of Witte into Anglo-American astrology. One important step was the three-day All-American Astrological Convention in Chicago 1936. Sveller presented his lectures about the new German astrology to over 500 people in the audience. Also, his short phrase, Uranian astrology, was mentioned for the first time. In 1939, Sveller published his translation of the rules for planetary pictures under the additional title Uranian System of Astrology. This name for Witte's astrology is known worldwide today and proceeded to make Witte's system known in the English-speaking world. Ludwig Rudolph pointed out that Richard Sveller's translation of the rules based strictly on the given German texts. Even the interpretations were found on the same pages. It is regrettable that the historical edition of the first and only original rules book translation, in the sense of Alfred Witte, is widely unknown in the English-spoken area. Since my official republishing of Sveller's edition in 2014, this gap of knowledge was filled. Sveller's translation based on the third edition of the rules book, but he translated the main part of the book only, the planetary rules, the perpetual ephemeris of Witte's 4 trans-Neptunians until 1950, meanings of houses and a short excerpt of the original introduction. The index with the alphabetical listing of the interpretations was planned for another publication. Probably Sveller never finished the index because he died already in 1942. The second period, rules book, the fourth edition between 1946 and 1950. During Alfred Witte's lifetime, all published rules book didn't included Pluto and the trans-Neptunians by Seagren. The ban of astrology ended in 1945. This was 4 years after Witte's death and after the end of the World War II. Ludwig Rudolph got a new publisher license by the Allied military government and the second period began. Rudolph asked his former student Hermann Lefeld to support the integration of Pluto, Apollon, Admetus, Vulcanus and Poseidon into the rules book. In the summer 1945, the dawn of the second period started. Rudolph and Lefeld met each other for the preparation of the new rules book edition. In several working sessions during 14 days they prepared the new fourth edition of the rules for planetary pictures. Rudolph determined the frame guidelines. The most important guideline was that the original interpretations of the former rules book editions by Rudolph and Witte remain unchanged for the most part. Please take into account 5 additional factors, means 50% new combination since the previous editions. This extension work was mainly provided by Lefeld. In December 1946, Lefeld finished his extension work which became the groundwork of the second rules book period. This work was the source for all subsequent editions until today. One fundamental change was Lefeld's new sorting of the factors. Alfred Witte's sorting of the first period based on mundane life and astronomical plus astrological thinking. Lefeld's sorting based on personal life and philosophical plus astrological thinking, which is total different to Witte's ordering. Lefeld's sorting, first the personal points, then the known planets, followed by the hypothetical planets by Witte and hypothetical planets by Seagren. The sorting by Lefeld started in all editions of the second period with the 6 personal points. Meridian is the expression of the eye. For Lefeld, meridian is the most important point. The next point is the counterpart to meridian, the Aries point. The great public is an expression for the not I, sun. The third factor, symbolize the body, and sun is for Lefelt the weakest expression for the I. Its counterpart ascendant is the weakest expression for the not I. This is followed by moon and moon's nodes in an equal way. This is an interesting idea, but the sorting of the personal points can be changed and can be explained in many different ways. The main new idea was to combine all personal points in the start of the sorting, followed by the known planets, and in the end the hypothetical planets. This is still valid in Uranian astrology today. Rudolph pointed out that the rules book meanings of Pluto were developed from Vitter's short interpretation, conversion, change and transformation. However, the basic meanings of Seagram's trans-Neptunians were redefined in parts by Lefelt. An example, probably you know the expression for Uranus plus Apollon is Uranian astrology, but the term Uranian astrology isn't found in the rules books. I started searching for the source and found a hint in Seagram's short publication Planetary Rules. In this early listing of 1931 we can find 57 combinations with traditional factors, and also we find Seagram's original interpretation of Uranus plus Apollon. Seagram called the combination Uranus plus Apollon mathematical astrological science. This term is really a synonym for Uranian astrology and the original source of this interpretation, still known today but not included in the rules book. Lefelt used this source, but he divided Seagram's original interpretation into 3 standalone expressions. Instead of mathematical astrological science, he wrote new science, mathematics, and astrology. Until today this words of Lefelt are unchanged in all editions of the second period. This is an exemplary for Lefelt's editing. Not included in Seagram's early publication was Poseidon. For this reason Poseidon's interpretations by Lefelt are not completed and in parts more different to Seagram's requirements. Seagram was still alive as the second period started, but Seagram was not interviewed about Poseidon. Prominent examples about Poseidon's meaning in the way of Lefelt and Rudolph. Poseidon was connected to religion, but for Seagram religion and ideology belongs to Apollon. The mundane quality of Poseidon wasn't considered in the rules book. In Seagram's opinion the mundane quality of Poseidon is important in cases of water catastrophes. For example flooding and water masses belongs to Poseidon's, which is a double Neptune. Poseidon and spiritually is not suggested by Seagram in the same way. For Seagram Poseidon means the mental, psychical quality, high educated personality or deep thinker. For example ingenious ideas or people during meditations. In comparison to our present understanding, we can easily find out that the original interpretations of Seagram were different. Rules Book, the unofficial translation into English 1959. In 1959 Johannes Nigaman published a new translation of the Rules Book in the USA. This translation based on the 4th edition of the German Rules Book. Nigaman neither mentioned the German publishing nor the original authors. This translation included Lefelt's new sorting and Lefelt's new interpretations, and the same interpretations can be found on the same page numbers. It is common ground that Nigaman had published plagiarism-like translations. I call this Rules Book the unofficial translation. It never became legal because Nigaman rejected an agreement with financial commitments. It was claimed that Nigaman was one of the students of Witte and part of the astrological group in Hamburg. But I have to point out here, in 1925, as the Astrological Association Hamburg School was founded, Nigaman lived in East Prussia with a distance of 800 kilometers to Hamburg. It is no surprise that his name was never mentioned in members' listings of the association, and it is no surprise that Nigaman never attended meetings at the Hamburg School, where Alfred Witte started his lectures about the planetary rules. Furthermore, it has to be pointed out, the Immigration Service of the U.S. Department of Labor in New York City recorded that Nigaman immigrated into the USA in March 1926. At the same time the Hamburg School and the collection of planetary rules were just at the early start in Hamburg. Conclusion of these facts. Nigaman knowledge, translations and publications about Hamburg School, based mainly on German post-war publications, and not on personal experiences. Rules Book, the 5th German edition 1959. In 1959, With a delay of more than 20 years after the ban of the former rules book, the new German edition was available as a regular book again. This version included all instruction parts by Ludwig Rudolph, approximately 80 pages, which he wrote mainly in the first period of the rules book. This version became the bestseller of all rules book editions. In 1983 this edition was slightly corrected and in 2012 a little bit expanded, but for the main part the book remained unchanged until today. Rules book. The official translation 1974. The official English translation of the second period. In the early 1970s, Ludwig Rudolph asked Kurt Knupfer for an official translation of the fifth German edition into English. My grandmother Emma received the task to record the translations by Knupfer with her typewriter. With her typewriter she prepared the book for printing. In the end, the printed book shows the types of her machine. This was a hard task for Emma Rudolph, because she was unable to understand English and she didn't understand the translated words. She said to me, she had written down the book 5 times, until the work was done. The book was finished in 1973 and published a few months later in 1974. Please do me a favor, if you have such an edition in your hand, wait a minute and think about this hard work behind the scenes before you carry on. Emma Rudolph has done selfless jobs since the dawn of Uranian astrology. This edition was her personal masterpiece. This translation was printed in Hamburg and distributed in the USA first by Uranian Publications Wisconsin. Today it is available as an official reprint by Penelope Publications Florida USA. This translation became international standard reference book for planetary pictures of Uranian astrology. Rules book. The Thai language translation. In 1970 General Prayul and his friend Ludwig Rudolph closed a contract about the official translation into the Thai language. In 1978 the Thai translation was published as a regular book for the first time. Again the rules book was the guarantee for prosperous development of Uranian astrology. Ludwig Rudolph had predicted, and he was right, Thailand became a home for Uranian astrology similar to Germany. It is my intention to honor the friendship between General Prayul and Ludwig Rudolph, two important personalities, who have rendered outstanding work for Uranian astrology. This friendship was the solid basis for a long-term relationship between the astrological communities of Hamburg and Bangkok, and it is also a private friendship of families. Families who shared the same part of a successful history. In 2012, I renewed the Thai rules book contract with Kun Pan Che, the daughter of General Prayul. This solemn act is a signal for the future. We will carry on in the sense of our ancestral, and we honor the personalities who worked hard and selfless for the development of Uranian astrology. The photo shows the Rudolphs family in 1928, when the rules book story began. The rules book remains the driving force for a prosperous development of Uranian astrology. Until today, this book was translated into English, Thai, French and Japanese language. Some parts of the rules book were additional translated into Estonian, Latvian and Russian language. Furthermore, a Turkish language edition will probably come up soon. The rules book story and Uranian astrology is a big part of my family history. Uranian astrology, rules book and the publishing house accompanied our family until today. When the first rules book was published by my grandfather in 1928, the second astrologer's generation of my family made the early steps in life. My mother and her brother Rudo Rudolph were just 4 and 7 years old. Nearly 90 years later, my family is still active in Uranian astrology and the next generations. Thank you very much for your attention.